worse. The physical differences were obvious and even appreciated by most of them, except maybe the biologist who said man, being a mammal, breastfeeds young. But how to make the morally relevant differences clear? Now, that is a problem. Here's an attempt from French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, writing in the 18th century.
In all that does not relate to sex, woman is man. She has the same organs, the same needs, the same faculties. The machine is constructed in the same manner, the parts are the same, the workings of the one are the same as the other, and the appearance of the two is similar. From whatever aspect one considers them, they differ only by degree. In all that does relate to sex, woman and man are in every way related and in every way different. Got it? All right. How far such differences may extend, though, we can't tell. All we know for certain is that everything that is common between men and women must come from their species, and everything that is different must come from their sex. From this double point of view, we find so many relationships and so many oppositions that perhaps one of nature's greatest marvels is to have been able to make the two beings so similar while constituting them so differently.
Scotsman clad in kilt left the bar one evening fair. One could tell by how he walked that he'd had more than his share. He stumbled around until he could no longer keep his feet, and then he lay down in the grass beside the street to have a sleep. Ring-ting-tiddle-diddle-idee-o, ring-ting-tiddle-i-o. He lay down in the grass beside the street to have a sleep. Now about that time, two young and pretty girls just happened by. One says to the other with a twinkle in her eye, "Oh, see yon sleeping Scotsman, so strong and handsome built. Well, I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath their kilt. Ring-ting-tiddle-diddle-idee-o, ring-ting-tiddle-i-o. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath their kilt." They crept up to the sleeping Scotsman, quiet as could be, lifted up his kilt about an inch so they could see, and there, behold, for all to see, beneath his Scottish skirt was nothing more than God had graced him with upon his birth. Ring-ting-tiddle-diddle-idee-o, ring-ting-tiddle-i-o, was nothing more than God had graced him with upon his birth. You see where this is going? They marveled for a moment, then one said, "We must be gone. Let's leave a present for our friend before we move along." As a gift, they left a blue silk ribbon tied into a bow. About the bonny star, the Scotsman's kilt did a lift and show. Ring-ting-tiddle-diddle-idee-o, ring-ting-tiddle-i-o. About the bonny star, the Scotsman's kilt did a lift and show. The Scotsman woke to nature's call and stumbled toward the trees, lifted up his kilt and then he gawks at what he sees. And then he says with great surprise to what's before his eyes, "Ach, lad, I don't know where you've been, but I see you took first prize." Ring-ting-tiddle-i-o, ach, lad, I don't know where you've been, but I see you took first prize.
You talk about celebrating the differences. Well, men have been saying a long time before Rousseau that sexual difference makes all of the difference. In fact, it was Aristotle who I think first suggested that it was the sexual difference that creates the morally relevant difference between the genders. Now, Aristotle, as you might remember, was a biologist as well as a philosopher. And he wanted to show how moral distinctions were there in the very cells of our being, nurtured by the right kind of environment. So while Aristotle gives us various clues in the politics and Nicomachean ethics about how men and women should get along, the real story is in his biology.
For Aristotle, it's all about heat. Put simply, men have more vital heat than women, thus explaining a number of things, including men's perfection and women's lack of perfection. The hotter, the better. Get it? Now, a perfect, tiny male child encapsulated in the sperm is inserted by the man into the woman. Then it's up to her. If the woman is hot enough to produce an embryo that has semen, it remains a boy child. If the woman's not hot enough, the developing fetus degrades into a female child. The loss of semen causes the underdevelopment of the rational part of the soul, and thus the differences. In Aristotle's own well-translated words, the fact is, the nature of man is the most rounded off and complete, and consequently, in man, the qualities or capacities are found in their perfection. Hence, woman is more compassionate than man, more easily moved to tears, and at the same time more jealous, more querulous, more apt to scold and to strike. She is furthermore more prone to despondency and less hopeful than the man, more void of shame or self-respect, well, see Allison's song, more false of speech, more deceptive, and well, more retentive of memory. A lot of memory to remember all those verses. She is also more wakeful, more shrinking, more difficult to rouse in action, and requires a smaller amount of nourishment. The male is more courageous than the female, and more sympathetic in the way of standing by to help. Well, even in the case of mollusks, when the cuttlefish is struck with the trident, the man stands by to help the female. But when the male is struck, the female runs away.
Thank you, Brother Aristotle. Hopping forward a mere 18 centuries or so, we find author Schopenhauer making the same point.
Hence, it will be found the fundamental fault of the female character is that it has no sense of justice. This is mainly due to the fact already mentioned that women are defective in the powers of reason and deliberation. But it is also traceable to the position which nature has assigned them as the weaker sex. They are dependent not upon strength, but upon craft, and hence their instinctive capacity for cunning, and their ineradicable tendency to say what is not true. For as lions are provided with claws and teeth, and elephants and boars with tusks, bulls with horns, and cuttlefish with its clouds of inky fluid, so nature has equipped women for her defense and protection with the arts of dissimulation. Dissimulation is innate in woman and almost as much a quality of the stupid as the clever.
Oh, just wait. So, just what do you think is going on with these guys and their cuttlefish? All right, anyway, dissimulation. Creating a false appearance, hiding one's true self. If you look at how women who dared to be like the guys in the early days were treated, it's no wonder she learned to hide her light under a bushel.
Take the case of Hypatia. Hypatia was one of the early women who showed through her work that women were not so intellectually different from men after all. Hypatia was the daughter of Theon, who was himself a prominent scientist, writer, and philosopher. She taught mathematics, natural philosophy at the great school in Alexandria in the early 300s. She also invented a device for distilling water and for measuring the specific gravity of water. She challenged the conventional wisdom of thoughts like these.
All formal dogmatic religions are fallacious and must never be accepted by self-respecting persons as final. Reserve your right to think, For even to think wrongly is better than not to think at all. Well, to teach superstitions as truth is a most terrible thing.
Now, Hypatia's true story will never be known, and it has been suggested that the various tales of her life and death are fueled by the apparent problem we have with the integration of the strong female. However, as legend has it, Hypatia was dragged by a mob who pulled her from her classroom into the streets. They peeled her to death with oyster shells.
So, please enjoy your salad. And we will be back shortly.
An ode to Sophie. Nature itself, Rousseau does declare, has determined the cloth men and women must wear. Sophie and Emile, ideal forms of each, are such different creatures they're well out of reach. Of each other's role, their natural perfection, as well it should be, by nature's selection. The evidence? One need not look hard, it revolves around sex for our romantic bard. Active and strong men should be, while weak and passive, our dear Sophie. In this war of the sexes, women have power if only they'd learn to submit and to cower. So natural a union is only complete when Sophie embraces her sexual defeat. Like two puzzle pieces, like a hand in a glove, the meekness of women is needed for love. We know this is true, we know how it stands, because Sophie was made for Emile's demands. They each have their own role. Sophie has her own job to stay home for her man, whether prince or a snob. But it mustn't come easy. Emile needs to fight. The chase, after all, is for his delight. So what must she do, this woman of form, to take up her place with her own moral norm? Well, it's really quite simple, Rousseau would say. It's so very natural, she does it each day. Play with her dolls, learn to cultivate weakness, be modest and pretty with an air of meekness. Cunning's allowed, but reason won't do. She must be submissive the whole time. Her first duty, of course, is her house and her child, barefoot and pregnant while quiet and mild. Fine lace and art, embroidery too, such things are perfect for women to do. They're the right track, right from the start, to make women stay women and not get too smart. We're all better off. It must be the case that men are the strong and women have grace. So I look around now at my own modern life to see if women I know still live in such strife. Some would argue, and some often do, that women are still on the soles of men's shoe. Stuck in a place they don't want or need, women are equal, they loudly plead. But as for a Sophie, a woman to serve in sex or in morals, Emile's every nerve, if she is still around, this she of men's fate, though I haven't yet seen her, I'd ask for a date.
While this domestic function may have been a common theme of the social role of women, it's important to remember that since the time of Plato, women have been considered worthy of making a greater contribution to society beyond managing the household. Plato, in fact, suggests that society should not ignore the potential of women just because they happen to have been born the wrong sex.
You're a valuable part of this thing, don't you? There is, I propose, no administrative occupation which is peculiar to woman as woman or to man as man. Natural capacities are similarly distributed in each sex, and don't you agree that it is natural for women to take part in all occupations as well as men, though in all, women will be the weaker partners.
I can nothing but agree.
Are we therefore to confine all occupations to men only?
How can we?
Obviously we cannot. For we are agreed, are we not, that one woman may have a natural ability for medicine or music and another not?
Well, yes, of course.
And do we not further agree that one may be good at athletics while another has no taste for them? And one may be good at soldiering and another not?
I think so.
Then may a woman not likewise be philosophic or unphilosophic, high-spirited or spiritless?
Well, yes, of course.
Of course. Then there will also be some women fitted to be guardians. For these natural qualities, you will surely remember, were those for which we picked our men guardians.
Yes, they were.
You do remember. So, we can conclude that men and women have the same natural capacity for guardianship, save insofar as women are the weaker of the two.
You have stated it clearly.
That's it. Congratulations. We must, therefore, pick suitable women to share the life and duties of a guardian with men, since they are capable of it, and the natures of men and women are akin.
Their capabilities demand nothing less.
And the same nature should follow. The same pursuits, shouldn't they?
I couldn't agree more.
Well then, it seems the result of reason that to make a woman into a guardian, we presumably need the same education as we need to make a man into one, especially as it will operate on the same nature in both.
Ah, Plato, how could we have forgotten ye? It took another several hundred years before Mary Wollstonecraft, a brilliant British writer in the 1700s, said again that any differences that exist are there because of socialization. Betty Friedan, a kindred spirit writing in the 1960s, would label the socialization the feminist mystique. Now, neither argument, I dare say, would have impressed Immanuel Kant, who was writing about the same time as Wollstonecraft. Kant, like his contemporary Schopenhauer, insisted on the inherent differences in the nature of men and women. Well, we couldn't help imagining an exchange between all four over the old issue of nature versus nurture, in determining, among other things, who should take out the trash.
Without work, a man can never be contented. One who wishes to sit down in peace and free himself from all work neither feels nor enjoys his life at all. But so far as he is active, he feels that he is alive. And only so far as he is industrious can he ever be contented. A man must be industrious. A woman only needs to have an occupation. Occupation without a purpose is to be occupied in being idle, where we busy ourselves only for amusement. Women have a strong-born feeling for all that is elegant, beautiful, and decorated. They love pleasantry and can be entertained by trivialities, if only these are merry and laughing. Very early they have a modest manner about themselves, knowing how to give themselves a fine demeanor and be self-possessed.
I hereby throw down the gauntlets and deny the existence of sexual virtues not exempting modesty. For men and women, truth, if I understand the meaning of the word, must be the same. Women should be considered moral, rational beings. Thus they should acquire virtues which they then can call their own. For how can a rational being be ennobled by anything that is not obtained by its own exertions? And will moralists pretend to assert that this is the condition in which half of the human race should be encouraged to remain with listless inactivity and stupid acquiescence? It is vain to expect virtue from women till they are, in some degree, independent of man.
Some say women are talkative because the training of infants is their special charge, and their talkativeness soon teaches a child to speak because they can chatter to it all day long. If men had the care of children, they would take much longer to learn to talk. Don't you agree, Mr. Schopenhauer?
I absolutely agree. Of course I agree. Women are directly fitted for acting as the nurses and teachers of our early childhood by the fact that they are themselves childish, frivolous, and short-sighted. In a word, they're big children all their lives long. Kind of an intermediate stage between the child and the full-grown man, who alone is man in the strict sense of the word. See how a girl will fondle a child for days together, dance with it and sing to it, and then think what man, with the best will in the world, could do if you were put in her place.
So there you have it, Wollstonecraft, from the minds of two great philosophers.
How grossly do these men insult us, who thus advise us only to render ourselves gentle domestic brutes. Men, indeed, appear to me to act in a very unphilosophical manner when they try to secure the good conduct of women by attempting to keep them always in a state of childhood.
Yeah.
It is melancholy
Yeah?
truth. Yet such is the blessed effect of civilization. The most respectable women are the most oppressed. How many women thus waste life away, the prey of discontent, who might have practiced as physicians,
Yeah.
regulated a farm, managed a shop, and stood erect, supported by their own industry, instead of hanging their heads, surcharged with the dew of sensibility. How much more respectable is the woman who earns her own bread by fulfilling any duty than even the most accomplished beauty. I'm sure you agree, Miss Friedan.
Hell yes, but you can call me Betty. What were the words women used to use when they tried to express it, though? I mean, sometimes a woman would say, I feel empty somehow, or incomplete. Or she'd say, I feel like I don't even exist. The women who suffer this problem have a hunger that food won't fill. I swear, I've heard so many women, Mary, try to deny this to satisfy boys within themselves because it doesn't fit the pre-picture of femininity that we've been given by the experts. I think it won't end as long as the feminine mystique masks the emptiness of the housewife role, encouraging girls to evade their growth by vicarious living.
See how emotional these women get? Do you want this woman to be your position?
Well, you have it half right, Schopenhauer, not all right. We have gone too far blaming or pitying mothers who devour their children, who sow the seeds of progressive dehumanization because they have never grown to full humanity themselves. If the mother is at fault, why isn't it time to break the pattern by urging all these sleeping beauties to grow up and live their own lives? We will never have enough Prince Charmings or enough therapists to break the pattern now. It's society's job, and finally that of each woman alone. For it's not the strength of mothers that is at fault, but their weakness, their passive, childlike dependency and immaturity that we call femininity.
Let women share the rights, and she will emulate the virtues of man, for she must grow more perfect when emancipated.
Oh, right on. And thus the debate went on. And some might say still goes on. But after Wollstonecraft, women became more articulate in declaring the unjust quality of gender inequality and the fact that women unfree is woman unknown. In the Declaration of Sentiments adopted by the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention of 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton listed some of the repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of men toward women.
He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to the elective franchise.
He has compelled her to submit to laws in the formation of which she had no voice.
He has withheld from her rights, which are given to the most ignorant and degraded men, both foreign and natives.
Having deprived her of this first right of a citizen, the elective franchise, thereby leaving her without representation in the halls of legislation, he has oppressed her on all sides.
He has actually made her, if married, in the eye of the law civilly dead.
He has taken from her all right and property, even to the wages she has earned.
He has denied her the facilities for obtaining a thorough education, all colleges being closed to her.
He has endeavored in every way that he could to destroy her confidence in her own power, to lessen her self-respect, and to make her willing to lead a dependent and abject life.
Now, in view of this entire disenfranchisement of one half the people of this country, their social and religious degradation, in view of the unjust laws above mentioned, and because women do feel themselves aggrieved, oppressed, and fraudulently deprived of their most sacred rights, we insist that they have immediate admission to all the rights and privileges which belong to them as citizens of these United States. In entering upon the great work before us, we anticipate no small amount of misconception, misrepresentation, and ridicule, but we shall use every instrumentality within our power to effect our object.
We shall employ agents, circulate tracts,
petition the state and national legislatures,
and endeavor to enlist the pulpit and the press in our behalf.
Hey, go away, son. Live with them, live without them, but you know there's something necessary about a little boy. That you fighting off your men, wearing out those walking shoes. Just keep that till the second. Ain't get no sleeping, 'cause she is a weeping woman. Hold out your head, wearing out those walking shoes. Well, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. It's better to talk with them than to talk about them. Hold out your head, wearing out those walking shoes.
Whatever their nature or nurture has made of them, women, like others who find themselves lacking power, use what the oppressors have not. And what are those special characteristics of women? Guile, maybe. Sexual allure, oh yes. And of course the ability to give birth. Kierkegaard tells us the seductive power of women was how the gods got back at man.
Cunningly, the enchantress was fashioned. The very instant she enchanted man, she transformed herself and held him captive. This is what the gods wanted. But what can be more delicious, more pleasurable, more enchanting than this which the gods, as they were fighting for their own power, devised the only thing that could decoy man? And verily it is so. For woman is the unique and the most seductive power in heaven and on earth. And in this comparison, man is something exceedingly important.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps this is why male philosophers time and again have tried to downplay or ignore the power of women. I'm sure Aristotle was not the first man, and I dare say the last, to struggle with the issue of reproduction. Many centuries later, Thomas Hobbes, in trying to figure out where people come from and how they should relate to one another, makes this curious observation.
Let us return again to the nature and consider men as even now as if we just hopped up out of the ground and suddenly, like mushrooms, come to full maturity without all the complicated engagements that others need.
Sorry, Hobbes, that's not the way it happens. People are the products of relationships. We don't exactly pop up or pop out as fully formed, rational, autonomous beings. We begin in the most intimate and dependent of relationships, as with all beings, male or female, dependent on women. We begin in relationship with our gestating mothers.
Raised by the women who were stronger than you know. Patchwork quilt of memory only women could have sewn. Threads were stitched by family hands, protected from the moths by your mother and her mother. weavers of your cloth.
Now, many of these guys, philosophers, have come around to this, but they often turn from writing about birth and the importance of the nurturing relationship to how they can justify the man being in charge. Now, I hope you're following this, right? Birth, nurturing relationship, the man in charge.
Inasmuch as every family is a part of a state, and these relationships are the parts of a family, the virtue of the part must have regard to the virtue of the whole.
Thus it is easy and almost natural for children.
Do you have Shakespeare?
Thomas Hobbes speaking now. Playing with my name tag. Thus it is easy and almost natural for children by tacit and scarcely unavoidable consent to make way for father's authority and government. They have been accustomed in their childhood to follow his direction and to refer their little differences to him. And when they were men, who fitter to rule them?
And so children grow comfortable with the idea of being governed by man. As Rousseau tells us,
In the family, it is clear, for several reasons which lie in its nature, that the father ought to command. In the first place, the authority ought not be equally divided between father and mother. The government must be single, and in every division of opinion, there must be one preponderant voice.
Yeah, and guess whose voice that is? The philosophers couldn't quite ignore the fact that the father of the child is always the woman's secret. Says Hume.
Men are induced to labor for the maintenance and education of their children by the persuasion they are really their own, and therefore it is reasonable and even necessary to give them some security in this particular. The security cannot consist entirely in the imposing of severe punishments on any transgressions of conjugal fidelity on the part of the wife, since these public punishments cannot be inflicted without legal proof, which 'tis difficult to meet with in the subject. In order, therefore, to impose a due restraint on the female sex, we must attach a peculiar degree of shame to their infidelity, above what arises merely from its injustice, and must bestow proportionable praises on their chastity.
There is the rub for men, at least before DNA testing. They had no choice but to trust the woman to be honest about her reproductive choices. Now, how is the guy supposed to do that when philosopher after philosopher after philosopher have talked about the fact that women are naturally deceptive? Schopenhauer, of course, says it best. The favorite of the evening.
It is as natural for women to make use of deception on every occasion as it is for those animals to employ their means of defense when attacked. They have a feeling that in doing so, they're only within their rights.
Now, wait a minute. He's my graduate student. And anyway, I've got to point out the contemporary feminist thinker Carol Gilligan would have to agree with Schopenhauer. Gilligan tells us that people who are powerless find ways of manipulating their environment. And what better way to manipulate than to deceive the powerful?
Oh, Johnny be fair and Johnny be fine and wants me for to wed. And I would marry Johnny, but my father often said, I'm sad to tell your daughter what your mother never knew. But Johnny is son of mine, and so he's kin to you. Well, Jimmy be fair and Jimmy be fine and wants me for to wed. And I would marry Jimmy, but my father often said, I'm sad to tell your daughter what your mother never knew. But Jimmy, too, is a son of mine, and so he's kin to you. Well, Billy be fine and Billy be fair and wants me for to wed. And I never saw a girl so sad and sorry as I was. The boys in town were all my kin, and my father was the cause. If life should thus continue, I'll remain a single miss. And so I'll go to mother and complain to her of this. Well, daughter, haven't I taught you to forgive and to forget? And if your father sowed his oats, well, still you needn't fret. Your father may be father to all the boys in town, but still, he's not the one who sired you, so marry him.
In fact, some women have fought long and hard against marriage.
Here is the sad tale of Heloise and Peter. Heloise was born in 1101 and educated in logic, rhetoric, and philosophy. She lived with her uncle, who was a cleric and who made her education a priority. Her uncle paid Peter Abelard to tutor her in the study of letters. Heloise was nearly 18 and Peter was probably in his late 30s or early 40s when they fell in love and she became pregnant. He wanted to marry, but she did not.
I actually prefer wedlock, love to wedlock, and freedom to bond.
Nevertheless, once they told Heloise's uncle about the situation, they were married in a private ceremony. Peter and Heloise both tried to keep their marriage a secret. Peter wanted to avoid the ridicule from his colleagues, and Heloise, well, she was just pissed.
The name of wife may seem more sacred or more worthy, but sweeter still to me will always be the word lover, or, if you permit me, that of concubine or whore.
The uncle and his servants were spreading the news of the marriage, and Heloise kept denying being married. Finally, Peter got fed up with the situation and sent Heloise off to the convent. The uncle decided that Peter had abandoned Heloise, so he gathered up to be friends. They castrated Peter. After his emasculation, Peter became a monk.
Of course, some women are never satisfied, or they set their standards a bit high. Take, for instance, Shakespeare's fiercely independent Beatrice, who in the bard's Much Ado About Nothing seems a little too inspired from Eloise's example. As a matter of fact, she reminds me of something else that great woman philosopher Mae West once said. Marriage is a fine institution. It's just some of us aren't ready for an institution yet.
Oh, Lord, I could not endure a husband with a beard on his face. I had rather lay in the woolen.
But you may like to want a husband that hath no beard.
What should I do with him? Dress him in my apparel and make him my waiting gentlewoman? He that hath a beard is more than a youth, and he that hath no beard is less than a man. And he that is more than a youth is not for me, and he that is less than a man, well, I am not for him. So deliver I up my apes, and away to St. Peter for the heaven. He will show me where the bachelors sit, and there live we as merry as the day is long.
Which goes to show, I suppose, one woman's heaven is another man's hell. But before we give up on marriage entirely, let's hear again from Kant. You know, the guy who said that women just lacked the rational capacity to make them moral human beings? Kant, of all people, would come around to admitting the equality of women in marriage. He was forced to, by his own conviction that people be treated as ends in themselves and not the means to another's pleasure. It would be nice to say that he spoke from experience, but alas, Kant was engaged twice and never went through with it.
The sole condition on which we are free to make use of our sexual desire depends upon the right to dispose over the person as a whole, over the welfare and happiness, and generally over all the circumstances of that person.
Doesn't sound too promising so far, does it?
Wait. Hear me out. Now, how am I to obtain these rights over the whole person? Well, only by giving that person the same rights over the whole of myself. Now, this happens only in marriage. Matrimony is an agreement between two persons by which they grant each other equal reciprocal rights. each of them undertaking to surrender the whole of their person to the other with a complete right of disposal over it. If I yield completely to another and obtain the person of the other in return, I win myself back. I have given myself up as the property of another, but in turn I take that other as my property, and so win myself back again in the winning the person whose property I have become. In this way, the two persons become a unity of will.
And you wonder why they think philosophers have their heads in their clouds. Well, long after Kant and unity of will, John Stuart Mill and the love of his life, Harriet Taylor, took the unity of will's idea a step further in the mid-1800s in trying to explain to an uncomprehending society what love is like when there's a unity of intellect, talent, respect.
What marriage may be in the case of two persons of cultivated faculties, identical in opinions and purposes, between whom there exists a best kind of equality, similarity of powers and capacities, with reciprocal superiority in them, so that each can enjoy the luxury of looking up to the other, and can have alternately the pleasure of leading and being led in the path of development, I don't let it have to describe.
I maintain with the profoundest conviction that this, and only this, is the ideal of marriage. When each, two persons, instead of being nothing, is a something. When they are attached to one another and are not too much unlike to begin with, the constant partaking in the same things, assisted by their sympathy, draws out the latent capacities of each for being interested in the things which were at first interesting only to the other, and works a gradual assimilation of the tastes and characters to one another, partly by the insensible modification of each, but more by a real enriching of the two natures, each acquiring the tastes and capacities of the other in addition to their own.
Wait a minute, Denny. Are we going to let a man have the last word? I mean,
Don't they always have the last word?
No, it's true. Harriet kicked the bucket before John Stewart. Does he get the final say?
No. Actually, the biggest problem we've had this evening is trying to sort of piece out what part of women's philosophy to use, because there's been so much wonderful thought. So what we're going to end up with is that wonderful contemporary feminist philosopher, Annie Fraser.
Ayn Franco.
And then,
You're so hip.
and then, as you might have noticed, because I brought it to everybody's attention, on the back of your name tags you have a quote. And these are quotes that were on the cutting room floor, the quotes that were too good that we thought to just leave out. And so after Leandra reads us the poem, you'll have an opportunity to share with the group your quote or anything else you'd like to share, and then Allison will have a final musical piece for us.
Squint your eyes and look closer. I'm not between you and your ambition. I'm a poster girl with no poster. I am 32 flavors and then some. And I'm beyond your peripheral vision, so you might want to turn your head. But someday you're going to get hungry, and you boast of the words you just said. My mother taught me about goodwill, and I have done well by her name. Just the kindness I've lavished on strangers is more than I can explain. Still, there's many who turn out their porch lights, just so I would think we're not home, and hid in the dark of their windows till I passed and left them alone. And God help you if you're an ugly girl. Of course, your pretty is also your doom, because everyone harbors a secret hatred for the pretty and strong woman. And God help you if you're a phoenix, and you dare to rise up from the ash. 1,000 eyes will smolder with jealousy, while you are just flying past. I don't try and give my life meaning by demeaning you. Still, I'd like to state for the record that I did everything that I could do. I'm not saying that I'm a saint. I will never be that way. No, I will never be a saint, but I will always say, squint your eyes and look closer. I'm not between you and your ambition. I'm a poster girl with no poster. I'm 32 flavors and then some. I'm beyond your peripheral vision, so you might want to turn your head. Someday you're going to be starving and eating all of the words you just said.
So final comments from you. Here.
The right education of the female sex as it is in a manner everywhere neglected, so it ought to be generally lamented. Most in this depraved age thinks a woman learned and wise if she can distinguish her husband's bed from another's. 1690.
And Louise Wise said, men are taught to apologize for their weaknesses, women for their strengths.
This isn't actually my question. Something I like anyway. It's from Rebecca West. And I don't get any opportunity to quote it, so it's I don't know if I'm a feminist or not. All I know is people call me whenever I express sentiments that stimulate me from the doormat.
A woman who strives to be like a man lacks ambition. Who said that? Well, flirting is the gentle art of making a man feel pleased with himself.
I knew that one. I didn't get one. If the world were a logical place, men would ride side saddle.
So I'll sing the melody for you, and you'll hear it the whole way through, and you can sing the last verse with me. And again, if you know it, just